everyone, and welcome back to BGATVHD, the show where we do gaming commentaries every other day. And on today's episode, we are doing a spoiler review of Avengers Endgame. Now, I highly advise if you have not watched this movie yet, that you do so immediately. Of course, if you don't have the money, add this video to your watch later and don't watch it later until you've seen it like on Blu-ray or the Netflix rentals when that comes out or whatever. Just don't listen if you haven't watched it. As the Russo brothers say, don't spoil the endgame. Because it's true. You really don't want it spoiled for you. I mean, seriously, it's the complete culmination of like 11 years of Marvel movies over a lot of franchises. A lot of franchises. It's just, gosh, this movie was so crazy. It was 3 hours long. That's almost the longest movie I've seen. I mean, I've watched all the Lord of the Rings movies, so, yeah, you know, I've been around for longer, but this was still a pretty long one. You know, there was things before the movie came out about Avengers or Marvel fans worried about the runtime because they had to pee. Like, seriously. I mean, well, at least when I went, which was actually earlier today, there was none of that problem in my theater. But anyway, let's get to the actual movie. As I said, this is a spoiler review, so I'm gonna be probably talking about every aspect of the movie, including my biggest problem, the biggest surprise, and basically the entire plot as well. You know, this is a 3-hour movie, but geez, I'm just gonna say it right out the gate. I felt like they really needed more time to develop some of these characters. And here's the first point I'm gonna bring up. Because this is actually a more ambitious crossover than Infinity War, it has more characters and everything. You know, it has Ant-Man, Wasp, and Captain Marvel added in there. But it does actually take away some of the people who were dusted for a while more. But obviously, this means that characters are not going to be getting as much screen time. Because of this, some characters who were, of course, like, not there for most of the movie, still got enough screen time in the end sequence, which I will talk about later. But people like Wasp, who came back just for the end sequence, because of course they were dusted as shown in the end credit scene of Ant-Man and the Wasp, she had one line of dialogue in the entire movie, and it was a reference to Ant-Man and the Wasp. So, yeah, alright. I mean, that's fine. And then, you know, just other characters, they didn't have equal amounts of attention. Really, the main focus was on Tony Stark and Captain America and the core group. Some on Thor, and we'll get to him later. He's another matter because they did some things with him that I do not totally agree with, but they're fine, kind of. So let's talk about the plot. So basically, it starts about 2 weeks after the end of Infinity War. Tony Stark and Nebula are adrift in space after fighting Thanos on Titan, and everybody except them who was on Titan, including, of course, Spider-Man, Peter Quill, and Doctor Strange, being dusted. So they're alone, they're in the Guardian spaceship, and they're just drifting, because they've kind of almost ran out of fuel. And in fact, the oxygen is going to run out in the morning. Now, here comes the next part, and if you've seen Captain Marvel, you'll kind of already know how this plays out. So, if you didn't know already, Captain Marvel, after Nick Fury's distress signal in the end credits scene of Infinity War, he sent a distress signal to Captain Marvel to like assist, because when everybody starts just disintegrating and planes start crashing into buildings and cars start crashing everywhere and everyone starts dying, yeah, you're probably gonna want to call the one person that's gonna be the strongest in this situation. So anyway, if you hadn't already seen the end credit scene of Captain Marvel, she arrived at the Avengers base, and I assume, and it wasn't told outright, but I assume they kind of briefed her on what had happened in Infinity War, and maybe even like the entire MCU since her journey off into whatever place she went. I have no idea. And so then, now this is one major plot hole. Well, it's not a plot hole, but it's just a kind of yada yada moment. And there are actually a lot of yada yada moments, but we'll get to that. So this yada yada moment is basically saying, well, somehow they figured out how to locate the Guardian spaceship. So, Captain Marvel goes off, flies off into space, goes and gets it, and brings it back to Earth. Now, here we are, and we have basically everybody who wasn't dusted on Earth, plus all the people who weren't dusted on Titan, excuse me, who weren't dusted on Titan on Earth, and they're all together. Now, obviously, they're still kind of grappling with the fact that the Avengers lost, and the fact that, half the universe just freaking died. And this wasn't outright said, but I think this also included animals as well. Because I think when they actually, and we'll get to this whole part later, but when they actually restored all the life, the whole world just felt more alive with nature sounds. And I think this was intentional because even though they didn't say it, they were focusing on the sentient life part of it. Animals as well died with the snap. Not plants, because I think the Infinity Stones might have been smarter than that. And so, yeah, they locate Thanos by tracking the energy signatures of the Infinity Stones and to their last uses. They track him to the planet, and apparently they had been used like last week or something. So they all travel there really fast and everything. And Thanos is just minding his own business, living a very simple life, actually. He's basically turned into a farmer. He's hung up his armor, and apparently the Infinity Stones are gone. He destroyed them so nobody else could use them for a nefarious purpose, or probably the more likely scenario, to restore the other half of the life that he destroyed. So, enraged by this, Thor decided to actually go for the head, and went for the head, and in one fatal blow, decapitated Thanos in one of the more gruesome scenes in the MCU so far. Now, I really did like this scene because the shock factor was just like, holy crap, Thanos is gone. And it was just such an simple, quick, easy death that really just captivated me for a little bit after, because it was so unexpected. I knew he was gonna die, but I thought he was gonna put up a fight or something. But no, just like out of surprise, just he went for the head. He took Thanos' advice and went for the head. Well, the Infinity Stones are gone, all the people are still dead, and Thanos is gone. So, with that, everybody heads back to Earth, and Thor retires to New Asgard, which is where the remaining surviving Asgardians from the spaceship that Thanos raided at the beginning of Infinity War have settled down. And yeah, their village is actually pretty cool looking. It's just a simple kind of European village, and there are some things I would like to know about this village, like, are the people still living like 5,000 years? Have they reverted to a more mortal, or like more normal mortal state? Or are they basically just Asgardians but without all of the crazy magical stuff that they had before? And obviously, some of this might have been true, but we do know one thing: they have internet, because in the next scene, I don't remember who, but somebody goes to get Thor or visits Thor, and oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, he's in his house with Korg, by the way, who also survived, and Valkyrie's there too, not in the house. She's kind of out in the village. You talk to whoever. Actually, I think it was Bruce Banner, and we'll get to him in a minute after I talk about this incredibly amazing, cringy, and hilarious scene all in the same moment. This was one of the more surprising things that I totally was not expecting at all, but looking back on it was probably something I should have expected at some point with all the crossovers. So we walk into Thor's like shack house thing, and Thor, who has this huge like stomach, like beer gut now, and he's sitting on the couch, PlayStation 4 controller in hand, playing nothing other but Fortnite. Yes, that's right. Fortnite is canon in the MCU. Okay, so I'm gonna be honest. The time that this, like, happened, when I was in the theater, this was, like, shocking to me and hilarious at the same time, because I was like, holy crap, Thor is playing Fortnite. I mean, that's hilarious, but then there's also the fact that that makes this movie a movie that was specifically made in this year, or heck, it could have even been put for last year, because I'll tell you, if people are rewatching this in the future, and I don't mean by future, but I mean like a few years or a decade down the line, they're gonna look at that scene and think it's really outdated. So then there's a little skit about about Thor taking the mic from Korg and like threatening to come over to Little Timmy's house, uh, and like do stuff to him. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was just trying to make fun of like I don't know if it was supposed to be making fun of like Ninja or making fun of like Fortnite trollers, or like the people who trolled on Minecraft and then Fortnite, or both. Or, it was just a really weird scene that I actually rather wish wasn't in the movie. So anyway, everybody gets back, and then a mouse spectacularly accidentally activates the quantum realm transporter and transports Ant-Man back from the quantum realm, which he was stuck in at the end credits scene of Ant-Man and the Wasp. I know we're going back there a lot. And so he gets out, and he goes to the Avengers HQ, and everybody's like, what? And then, so yeah. There you have it. He comes in, and he's like, wait, 5 years have passed, but it's only been 5 hours for me. So that means time travel. Yes, that's right. We're time traveling in this movie. Rule number 1 of movies, stories, or really anything: you don't time travel. You can have your characters go to a place where time moves faster and then come back from that place and it be later in time, but you should never have time travel because it opens up plot holes and problems in the timeline. But I'll say that Marvel handled this surprisingly well, actually better than I was expecting. In fact, they actually did it like really well and were able to make some great jokes off of it. So then the Avengers, with Pym particles and time traveling suits, I know, I'm really yada-yadaing a lot more stuff. Oh yeah, and there's also, I think there's a lot more stuff I'm kind of glossing over, but regardless, it's just a overview of the plot. So anyway, so they split up into 3 teams. One team is going Actually, no, it's 4 teams. One team is going to 2012 New York. And you know what's there happening? The Battle of New York. So you're basically taking the later Avengers and going back to the first Avengers. And this sets up for some comedic moments. Ant-Man comes along too with Tony Stark and Captain America and Hulk. Yeah, Hulk. So anyway, Hulk goes to the Sanctum Sanctorum and talks with the... Oh, crap, I forgot her name. She's the bald lady. The bald lady from Doctor Strange, who's like the Sorcerer Supreme. The Sorcerer Supreme. I don't remember her actual name, but she was the Sorcerer Supreme at the time. Apparently, she knew that Doctor Strange was going to be the next Sorcerer Supreme. But if she had done that, why wouldn't she? Anyway, that opens up a lot of loopholes. But anyway, Hulk eventually, or Bruce Banner, mind you, actually ends up convincing her to give him the Time Stone, which he does. Then, yeah, I actually don't know what he does for a while longer. I can't remember if it was even shown or not. But anyway, Tony Stark and Captain America go to get the Space Stone from, which is actually, at that point, known as the Tesseract. Yeah, that's right. If you didn't know that, it's the Tesseract. So they're going in, and also with Ant-Man. So Ant-Man, in one of the more kind of funny scenes in the movie, so Ant-Man crawls up past Tony Stark's chest and actually gives him like a cardiac arrest, because I don't think he needed to live without his heart at that point. I mean, I don't know. There's some weird things that I've forgotten about this whole thing. But anyway, it's kind of funny, and they do that. But then things take a turn for the worst when Loki actually gets the Tesseract and teleports out of there. They do happen to get it back and transport, but not after Captain America fights Captain America. Yeah. So, after that's done, they actually don't get the Space Stone, or the Tesseract, but they also don't have the Pym particles to get back. So what they do, actually, is transport to the 50s or the 60s. I think it's the 60s. And they time travel back there, Iron Man and Captain America, where Iron Man has a run-in with his father. And this is actually a pretty emotional scene, because you get to see him spend a tiny bit of time with the father he didn't really have for most of his life. In fact, it was right before his mother was about to give birth to him. So, yeah. It was kind of like, oh, and by the way, I did not mention this, but Tony Stark has a family and a daughter. So, yeah. That's right. So Tony Stark gives advice to his dad on how to raise himself. Kind of. And it was kind of a weirder scene. He actually got caught by his dad, but he didn't actually get caught. He was stealing the Space Stone, but then Pym particles too. I don't remember what Captain America was doing this whole time. But anyway, that's really what they were doing that whole time. So then they transport back to the present and everything's good. They don't transport back. Again, there are some holes that I don't remember exactly. But anyway, now we go to 2014 during Thor: The Dark World, where Thor and Rocket have gone back to Asgard to get not only Mjolnir, but the Reality Stone, at that point known as the Ether, which they do. And, yep, Thor has a run-in with his mother, who, spoilers, died in Thor: The Dark World, but that's not really important. That movie wasn't really that great anyway. And Yeah, he got Mjolnir back. Great. So, with their job done, we switch to 2014, out in the middle of space, where Peter Quill is going for the Power Stone. Yeah, the Power Stone. So he goes for the Power Stone and he gets it. Well, no, he actually doesn't get it because Rhodey and Nebula are there to stop him from getting it. And by stop it, I mean knock him out. No, not after he's gotten, but like before he gets it, the Nebula goes in there, gets it, but because it's Nebula and her cybernetic enhancements, her 2014 self interfaces with her, and Thanos learns of his future victory. And this leads him to go and try to capture Nebula. He succeeds and actually sends 2014 Nebula back to the future, which is actually 2023 at that time, and then also at that point in time, yeah, I know this isn't really that great yet. Black Widow and Hawkeye are going to the planet with the Soul Stone. Black Widow dies in the sacrifice for the Soul Stone, just as did Gamora in 2018. Yeah, so with that all done, everybody has returned to the present. They have all the time stones, but of course, 2014 Nebula is there. So while everybody is in a lab making the new Infinity Gauntlet, the nanotech Iron Man Infinity Gauntlet, Nebula is opening the time portal for Thanos, 2014 Thanos, which is actually very different from 2018 Thanos, to go through time to the future to wreak havoc once again, knowing of his future victory. And because they have all the Infinity Stones, it's going to be 10 times easier for him to actually win this time, because not only is he actually using his entire army this time, he is also already has all the Infinity Stones in one spot. He's just got to go get them. Now, because they did this, well, Bruce Banner puts on the new Infinity Gauntlet and snaps his fingers and brings back all the tons of people who died when Thanos snapped his fingers. And that includes every person who had gotten snapped. Now, of course, that is not obviously at this point only Black Widow has died, and that's obviously not all the people who have died. And so Doctor Strange brings everybody who was dusted on Titan back, as well as opening portals to New Asgard, Wakanda, and other sorcerers to have all the armies pour out and form one huge, large army to go up against Thanos' huge, large army. And let me just tell you, I really enjoyed this scene, this end big, huge CGI battle, a whole heck of a lot more than Infinity Wars. And for mainly one reason, because it looked cooler, they had the flying things, there was more airspace and airtime, and there was more than just mindless beasts everywhere. So now we're getting close to the end of the movie, and so yeah, Banner wasn't really in the end. He was holding up, because when Thanos in his army came through from the past, they also shot the Avengers compound, which then promptly collapsed. So they are Banner is under there holding up the whole structure, which everybody is kind of fighting on and around. and he he survives, well, obviously. But now we come to my least favorite scene in the movie, where Spider-Man gets kind of pinned down by a soldier. Captain Marvel, like, awesome, amazingly destroys a whole, like, starship, and it was a really cool scene. Grabs him and is like, for help, and Spider-Man's like, oh, there's a lot of people here, I don't know if you can do this. And then all of the women character from the entire MCU come to her side and say she's not alone, she's got help. And the reason I do not like this scene is not because it has all the women characters. Obviously, that's a fine thing. I don't care if that happens, but what I do care about is how it's presented, and the way they present this is not very good. In fact, it's actually that there's a reason this is my least favorite scene in the movie. It just it doesn't work because they make it too blatantly obvious that they're doing it, because instead of there being like having all the men lined up at the beginning of the battle, they're like, let's do this, we're going to war. All the women are together in a different way that I don't think is necessarily better. Now, that's not to say it was a whole bad thing, because it really wasn't. I do like the fact that they really should have done that, and they did, but I just didn't like the way they did it in the first place. So anyway, all that concludes. Tony snaps his fingers with the new Infinity Gauntlet. Sorry, I keep saying it's the Infinity Gauntlet. And disintegrates Thanos, past Thanos, and his entire army. But the force from all that killed him. That's right, killed him. Tony Stark's dead. So anyway, with all that done, they send Captain America back in time to return all the Infinity Stones and Mjolnir back to their original times at the exact same point in time that they were taken, because of some weird thing that, like, if the universe doesn't have the Infinity Stones, then, like, time is gonna get messed up or something. Is really weird. But instead, he doesn't come back. He actually stays in some point in time and goes to live a normal life with Peggy Carter, which is what he intended to do before he was frozen at the bottom of the ocean for like over, what was, like 70 years or something. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that's like the entire story. Oh yeah, and then old Captain America hands off his shield to Falcon. So, I don't know if Falcon's gonna be the new Captain America or something. I really would have liked it to be Bucky, but you know, that's fine. So anyway, now we go on to my next point, which is going to be Hulk. Hulk. So, one thing they did with Hulk was, instead of being Bruce Banner and Hulk, they merged the two. And that's actually something that kind of made sense. So now you have Hulk's body with Bruce Banner's mind, but for some reason he isn't as strong as before, which I really wouldn't. I really would have had it so that he was kind of better, like still the same amount of strongness, but just like better. Anyway, just, you know, I thought they could have done that a little better, and of course, I like kind of just seeing the actors as themselves without all the CGI, because, you know, Spider-Man, when he's in his suit, Iron Man, when he was in his suit, what others? Black Panther, when he's in his suit, is definitely all CGI. A lot of these characters that have, like, full suits are, like, all CGI at some point. There's no face anymore. It's just like a voiceover, which is not necessarily a bad thing, again, but, you know, it's still something that needs to be addressed. So, yeah, that was a long ride for the plot, and I'll say there were quite a few holes. I missed some things in my synopsis, but I think I covered all the major points in pretty good detail. Now, yeah, I think I understand why the Endgame and Infinity War crossovers happened, because Fortnite is now canon in the MCU, especially with the fact. Now, my question is, does that mean that the Endgame event happened in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? That would be a loophole, because then you're literally getting an event in a game you're playing in the movie for the movie you're playing as an actor in. It's just really weird. And also, I don't know how Thor would react to Thanos being in Fortnite. That is definitely a thing to think about, and I'll leave you on that note. My final score for this movie is about an 8.9 out of 10. Not just good enough, just not good enough to be a 10, but good enough to be up there in the great range. I mean, not good enough to be a 9. So on that note, I guess that's about it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. And this is Brandon from Big McClark Gaming, signing off. Goodbye.